First time buyers. So you've worked extremely hard to save up that precious deposit and you're finally ready to buy your first property. You made sacrifices, you said no to the things that you love, and you finally got to the end where you're ready now to look for that dream home and move in. Now, I know when you were making all of those sacrifices and working hard, you were thinking about buying that one dream home. But did you know that it's possible to take that same deposit and maximize it by taking the right steps to be able to buy two properties without having to save up a separate deposit? In this video, I'm going to show you how you can take that money that you've worked hard to build, maximize it by following the right steps so that you can end up owning your first two properties in a short space of time by buying your first property the right way. Okay, so first up, how to deal with the viewings. You don't want to make the mistake of only going on one viewing and then falling in love with the property and then making an offer because you think that's your dream home, right? The key here is it's all about volume. You want to have as many viewings booked as possible, right? And obviously going on viewings is tiring. It's something that can be exhausting. You don't want to spread them out over several weeks. But one of the most strategic things you can do is basically get all of the agents on the line, speak to them about the properties you're interested in, ask them if they have any other properties they can show you that are similar to that category of properties you're interested in within the same price bracket, and block them all out on the same day, right? Because by condensing all of your viewings in one day, it saves you time, it saves you stress, and it helps you to gather all of the information you need on all of these properties and make a buying decision much quicker. And it's really important that you don't just go on 2 or 3 viewings. You want to stack as many as possible, even if you do it over a few different days, because the more viewings you go on, the more potential properties you've looked at and the more potential options you have that you can put in several offers for to end up with a successful property. The other thing you want to remember is that if you're doing so many viewings over a couple of days, it's very unlikely you're going to remember anything about each property after you've left. So what you want to do is be able to walk around with your camera, let the agent know that you're going to film as you're going around on the property, and make sure that you do like a running commentary to remember some of the main things that you like about the property and key things that you don't want to forget. Separate from that, when you finish each viewing, what you want to do is go to the notes section on your phone, type in the address of the property, and do a list of the pros and cons of what you liked about the property and what you didn't like about the property. Now, these notes combined with your video walkthroughs are going to be exactly what you need when you've gone away, you've had a cup of tea, maybe sat down, chilled, and you're a bit more comfortable at home, and you want to compare the different properties you viewed to really see what stood out to you and which ones you felt like were the ones that you really want to move in for. Next section, how to deal with agents. And let me tell you up front, the estate agent is going to usually be quite friendly, endearing, and quite personable. Now, nothing against estate agents. I've got friends who are estate agents too. But the truth is they work for the seller and you don't want to forget that. Because when you're out on your viewings, yes, it's good to be polite, be personable, engage with them, but you don't want to overplay your cards because when it comes down to negotiating later on, putting in offers and that kind of thing, you have to understand that the estate agent is usually incentivized to sell the property for the highest price possible. Why? Because they make a commission based on how much they sell the property for. So yes, be polite when you're dealing with them, but do not overplay your hand. Make sure you ask them open-ended questions on each viewing. Things like, what are the pros and cons of living in this area? What are the pros and cons of this property in particular? And a great opening question you might want to ask on each viewing is, what is the story on this property? The reason why I'm saying you should ask open-ended questions is because they give you an opportunity to draw out as much as possible from the estate agent rather than narrowing them down to give you yes or no answers. Because ultimately, remember, they do actually know a lot more about the property and the seller's position than you will. So by asking open-ended questions, you're able to draw out all of that key extra information that you can add to your notes and use that as potential leverage points later on. For example, when you ask them for the story on the property, they might tell you that the sellers have just inherited the property because their parents passed away. And something like that for you is going to be a golden nugget that you make sure you put down in your notes, because it gives you an idea of the seller's position, and when we come to negotiating later on, you'll be able to use that to your advantage. Now, let me tell you about making offers and counteroffers. Now, as a first-time buyer, you might look at buying a house like going to the shops and buying a drink. If there's a price tag on it, you expect to pay that. You don't usually think about negotiating. But the reality is, when it comes to buying a property, everything is negotiable. So just because it's listed for 300K, it doesn't mean that that's what you have to pay and that's what you have to offer. The list price is just an idea of a starting point of what the estate agents probably advise the seller it's worth, or it might even actually be what the seller thinks it's worth despite the estate agent already telling them it's worth less. This is where building some level of rapport with the estate agents can actually really work in your favor, because you can ask them cheeky questions like, what do you think this property is really worth? And just see what they say. Because from first-hand experience, asking those types of questions tend to be a chance for you to get key information that you might not have got otherwise. So when it comes to offers and counter offers, always make sure you put it in writing. No shade to estate agents. Again, I've got friends who are estate agents. The truth is there are some estate agents who might not necessarily pass your offers on. So you don't want to end up in a situation where you miss out on your dream property because you said something over the phone, they never communicated it, the property gets sold to somebody else, and you can't even prove that you put the offer across. And if you're thinking of making an offer that's significantly less than the price that they're asking for, make sure you're able to justify it. Because if you just make a lowball offer that insults them, they're probably just going to reject it and the estate agent's probably going to take you less seriously. If you can make a case that actually makes sense as to why your offer is exactly what it is, that's going to incentivize them to at least think a little bit more on the offer that you make. For example, if you see a property has been on the market for the last 6, 7, 8 months, that's something to give you an idea that there's probably a reason why it hasn't sold for the price it's listed. If you can see it's also been reduced, that's also another indicator. If you can see that when you went to do the viewing, there were certain things that were a little bit out of place with the property. Maybe there were cracks in the walls, maybe there were broken windows, maybe it was really old, maybe the boiler wasn't there and it was all electric, old storage heaters. Like, all of those types of things are the things you really want to compile in your notes. Remember, we spoke about that before, and use that to justify why it is that you're offering the price that you're offering. And you don't have to play that whole hand in your email when you're making the offer. It's just about being able to cover enough and give enough information to show that the reason why I'm offering this price is because I've taken into account the amount of money that I'm going to have to be likely to spend on doing all of the things to bring it up to repair, or whatever your justification is. And the last thing to note about making offers is that nothing's set in stone. If you make an offer and it gets rejected, you don't want to go in quickly and just give another offer straight away. What you want to do is to say something that's going to try to draw out a counter offer if one hasn't already been given by the seller. So for example, if the estate agent comes back and says to you, the seller said no, but they haven't given you any idea or inkling on any counter offer that they might be willing to accept, then the next question that you can ask them is, okay, so can you ask the seller to confirm what it is that they're kind of thinking in terms of a potential counter offer, and you might be willing to consider it. But be willing to do the back and forth of offers and counter offers in order to get the deal done. Because so long as there are offers and counter offers, there's usually room in between which you can use as negotiating power to land somewhere that you can both accept and agree on. And now it's time for the juicy part. How to justify a major discount. Now that we've covered offers and counter offers, it's important that you know that whatever you agree is not in stone. So even if you come to a price that the seller says they're happy to accept and the estate agent tells you that it's sold subject to contract, nothing is in stone. You are not bound, and you can change the price later on. And that's why the point I'm about to mention is very important, because after the offer is accepted, one of the first things the lender will do is arrange for a surveyor to go and visit the property and kind of check it out to make sure that it's not worth less than what the price is that you've agreed. Now, the downside with this is you're not usually going to be able to actually see the breakdown of that survey report. At best, you'll find out what the valuation figure is, and that's usually about it. And this is where it pays to get your own survey done, because a survey is a professional assessment on the property that is designed to find all of the potential problems with the property so that you can find out if there's anything you weren't aware of that might cost you money further down the line. So even though the lender will send their own surveyor for their risk assessment, you want to appoint your own independent surveyor to go and view the property, carry out a full survey, and provide you with a full survey report. Because you have to remember, it's the surveyor's job to find everything that they can out that is a problem or a potential problem with that property. And what that does is it gives you lots of key information that you can potentially use and stack to go back to the seller at a later stage and say, following the survey that was done on the property, having looked through the report, there are several items that have come up which are going to cost me money to bring the property back up to scratch. And therefore, I'd like to put a revised offer to the seller. And then you make a revised offer. And again, just like before, make sure you put it in writing. Make sure you send it through the official channels. And at this stage, you want to make sure that you copy in your solicitors to that first email that you're sending to the estate agent with the revised offer. And you also want to forward a separate email with the same content to your solicitors separately, asking them to send it to the seller's solicitors. Because this is all about making sure that your full message gets communicated to the seller. We don't want any funny games. We don't want anything that's going to cause for the sale to fall through. And we don't want any crooked estate agents that are not going to pass on the messages and going to play around. And here's where everything comes together. The reason why following all of these steps is so crucial for you as a first-time buyer is because if you manage to get a discount of, let's say, £50,000 off of the original asking price, and you only need to spend maybe £10,000 or even £20,000 to bring the property up to scratch, then just by being smart about following all of these steps, that gives you the opportunity to sell the property later on for a profit if you want to. Or just like those people we spoke about at the beginning of this video, there are ways that you can use that difference, that saving that you've made, to buy another property without having to put in any new money, without having to save up a second deposit. And if you want a separate video where I go into the detail of exactly how you can do that, drop it in the comments and I'll make it. Listen, I just want you to get this. Like, the reason why I've taken the time to put this video together is because I know how valuable following these steps can be. And I think if there's anything that wasn't clear, drop it in the comments and I'll be happy to do another video as a follow-on to clarify anything. If you've got any questions, let me know, because the thing is, as a first-time buyer, in a lot of ways, most people are starting with a disadvantage because you're not familiar with the world of property. A lot of people end up overpaying for their first property, which makes it a lot more difficult for them to secure their second property without having to start all over again. So it's important that you get this. And so if you're a first-time buyer and you want a one-page download, which is going to break all of this down so that you can kind of have something to refer to when you're actually starting to look at properties, hit the link in the description and you can just get that for free. It's not going to cost you a penny. And if you like this type of video and you want more of it, make sure you subscribe so that you never miss when I upload more content to help you become a winning first-time buyer.